excuse us here, folks. I think hopefully we got the mic issues all figured out there. Hopefully the audio's up and rolling now. Okay, just got the nod from one of my bosses over there. We're all good and rocking and rolling with the audio. Sorry for the mix-up right there, but let's start things over. Brand new start here. Welcome in for Austin now. I'm Marco Bitonel in for Alec Nolan. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be back here probably on Wednesday. He's just filling in on the anchor desk for right now, so he'll be back soon. But for now, you are hanging out with me. But I'm glad to be with you here on your Monday. And already, what a weekend it's been. What a Monday it's been over this course of, the past few days, both here in Austin as well as across the rest of the country. We've seen quite the activity from, a couple of murders here in Austin, 2 murders just 12 hours apart, and they were all in the same patrol area over here in North Austin. One of those shootings taking place in the exact same, or basically the almost same spot where a Caldwell County deputy was shot just last week. Then, once we're done looking at that, we're going to take a look at, a weekend full of protest here in Austin as well as across the rest of the country. It was just yesterday that we saw a wave of Iranian flags waving in front of the state capitol as hundreds of them took to the streets to support the ongoing protests that are sweeping across Iran that have been happening for the past few weeks now, as the regime over there has been cracking down on these protests, and with these death tolls now rising to a reported 644. So we talked to a lot of those people over there. They have a lot of family over there that they can't get in contact with because of that internet blackout. So we'll look at that. Then we'll also look at ICE activity, an ICE protest here in Austin as well. We saw some people get detained over the weekend. Things got a little rowdy there. There was deployment of pepper balls and tear gas here in Austin, and 5 people were detained as well. So we're going to be taking a look at that. Then we have a look at the Uvalde trials as well. So we got quite the lineup for you here this evening. Let's go ahead and get what we were talking into with these 2 homicides that happened here in North Austin just hours apart. Like I said, these happened in North Austin. This most recent one was reported about 8 p.m. last night. There were multiple gunshots in the 9400 block of North Lamar. There was a young man found there. He was a male in his 20s, found dead. They did try to give him life-saving measures when they got there on scene, but he unfortunately did pass away. Now, we were on scene there when APD did send one of their PIOs out there, and they gave a briefing, kind of explained the scene to us. And like I said, this is almost the exact same location where a deputy was shot just a few weeks ago over there in North Austin. So we'll go ahead and play that presser for you here in a second. This happened, this presser, about 10 o'clock last night when APD started filling us in here on the details. We'll go ahead and take a listen now.
My name is Officer Aaron Townsend with the Austin Police Department Public Information Office. First of all, we want to extend our condolences on behalf of the police department to the departed and his family. It's just another tragedy here today, and we can assure the citizens here in Austin that we are going to be doing everything we can to find those who are responsible for this. Tonight at 7:58 p.m., officers responded to 9415 North Lamar Boulevard for a stab hotshot call. Caller had called in stating that they heard multiple gunshots in the area. Officers arrived on scene and made contact with an individual who had obvious trauma to his body. They attempted life-saving measures at that time. EMS also arrived shortly thereafter and continued to attempt life-saving measures. However, the subject was pronounced deceased at 8:15 p.m. this evening. At this time, there's no further threat to the public. The information that we have is that there is it's not much, but there was a black Dodge Charger or Challenger with at least 2 subjects inside that may have something to do with this incident tonight. We ask the public, anybody who has any information about this, the incident here today, or the information I just gave out, to call Crime Stoppers at 512-472-TIPS or the homicide tip line at 512-477-3588. This is being investigated as Austin's 4th homicide of 2026. I'll take your questions if you have any.
Just to clarify, there isn't an active threat currently at the moment, but there is no suspects currently.
That's correct. The best information that we have at this time is that there was at least 2 people involved and a vehicle involved, as I described, a black Dodge Charger or Challenger. But it hasn't been pieced together what exactly their involvement is. They were seen in the area. So detectives are currently on scene, along with crime scene units, to put all these pieces together. And people are being interviewed right now as well at our main headquarters, witnesses who observed bits and pieces of this event tonight. Like I said, there were multiple gunshots that were heard, and there were people here on scene who witnessed something, and those people are being interviewed at this time.
You mentioned a car being involved, like potential drive-by or anything like that. Is there any information you can play?
That hasn't been determined specifically at this point, but as I said, there appears to be no further threat at this time. So you can take from that what you will, but as of right now, it's just being investigated as a shooting here, and detectives are working on the information right now.
This area, I mean, right over there, Club Rodeo 1 week ago was another incident of a homicide, literally a week ago. Could you speak a little bit more on the area? Has this been an area that has a rise in issue of crime recently?
Well, here in Austin, I don't really think there's one specific area that things just go in waves sometimes. There will be, coincidentally, a couple of homicides here in North Austin, then there'll be some East Austin, West. It does move around. I think it's just a coincidence, but as always, wherever you are in the city, it's important to be vigilant, be safe, be aware of your surroundings. So anywhere potentially can be a bad place to be if you're making bad decisions. And so tonight, like I said, this is just a tragedy. We don't know exactly what's happened here today. But like I said, our hearts go out to the family at this time.
You said that you can determine the vehicle was a Dodge Charger or Challenger. Was the vehicle either 2-door or 4-door? Do you guys know?
We don't know that. Okay. No, that's all the information I was given.
Regarding the person who sadly passed away, male, female, younger, older?
Male in his 20s. That's the only information that they've given me at this time. They're obviously they're pending notification of family members, so but out of respect for them, the only information is just it's a male in his 20s.
All right, so lots to unpack there from that presser last night that happened at about 10 o'clock, as we said. So we hear this, PIO telling us that, there's not really a lot to go off of right now. That it was just multiple gunshots reported last night, and that kind of the only bit of evidence that they have really to go off right now is they say there's some sort of black Dodge Challenger that was seen driving away from the scene, and right now they believe that there are 2 suspects involved. And another interesting thing that he says here when these reporters ask them, you say, hey, there was this shooting at Club Rodeo just a few weeks ago that involved an off-duty deputy who was shot and killed. Is this a sign of, an increase in activity or increase in criminal activity in this specific area over here in this, part of this little shopping complex that, some sort of action needs to be taken because 2 murders within the span of 2 weeks in almost the exact same spot? There might be a sign of an increasing, danger over there in that area. But, Officer Townsend saying, hey, there's a chance anywhere across Austin that you might come across, violent behavior like this. And he says, he called it a coincidence, saying this, might not be, a sign of this particular area being known for, for homicides. But that is interesting because, when we talked to Police Chief Lisa Davis just a few weeks ago when she was in this presser about the Caldwell County deputy who was shot and killed, she was obviously very upset about it. And she said that she was aware of this area over there. And she, obviously, anytime a deputy is shot and killed, you need to look at that area and say, what went wrong here. But she said she's aware of, this area being known for a lot of crime over there, and that they've heard other reports of shootings as well. And she hinted that they might need to take action in that area. And like you said, this was just a few weeks ago. Now you have another murder over here. So we'll go ahead and take a listen from her as well when she talks about this. This was her talking to reporters just a few weeks ago as well. So we'll go ahead and pull this clip up for you real quick. And, like we said, this is also just another murder that took place within that same area as well. We had another one just this morning at 6 p.m. in the general vicinity over there, just a few blocks away as well. So a lot of activity, at least so far for the beginning of this year, in that specific area of Austin. But we do have that clip now here for you for Lisa Davis. This was her talking to reporters about that specific area and what sort of action they might be taking here soon in the near future.
Are we thinking about some things that are going to change in terms of...
So listen, I have no doubt that the people that go to this club, the majority of them are law-abiding people that want to come and have a good time. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we're going to start looking at the places. We know that we are a department that is data-driven, and we use evidence-based science to address where we're going to be going. If I have a homicide of a police officer there, I have other shootings that occurred later in the year of 2025, that is a location that needs some attention. Now, whether it's the environmental design of how the space is made up, what is it looking like? So it's really taking a look at these locations that are causing this trouble, and how do we address it?
Lisa Davis talking there and saying that this is an area that needs to be addressed, and that some sort of action needs to be taken, but almost maybe a little too late. Now we're seeing another homicide over there in almost that exact same area. And if you want an idea of just how close these two homicides took place to each other, this was reported over here at 9515 North Lamar. That was that shooting last night at 8 p.m. where that young man in his 20s was killed. This is the spot over here on Google Maps. You can see right here. This is where it took down. Club Rodeo, where the off-duty Caldwell County deputy was shot and killed, was just right across the way here. So basically almost the exact same shopping complex where this all took place. And go ahead and give you a rundown of what happened in Caldwell County as well. Just a quick refresher for you in case you might have forgotten. This is Officer Aaron Armstrong, or Deputy Aaron Armstrong. He was the deputy working off-duty at Club Rodeo just a few weeks ago. It was on the night of January 4th. That he was working there. He kicked a young man out by the name of Thomas Bencess. They eventually started getting into a verbal altercation there in the parking lot. He was trying to get Bencess to leave after he'd gotten in a fight inside, and at one point, Bencess eventually, revealed a firearm, and Aaron Armstrong was fatally shot. They tried to give him first aid there on the scene, but he unfortunately passed away from his wounds. And this is, a case that took, the Austin by storm when this first, came to light. This, off-duty deputy just trying to make a little extra money, just trying to make some extra cash on the side, and he, unfortunately ended up giving his own life in order to, do this security over there at a nightclub. But when it comes to the people that were responsible for this as well, you mentioned, 32-year-old or 38-year-old Thomas Bencess. This is him right here. He has quite the rap sheet when you look at, how long he has been within the Travis County jail system. He has a rap sheet going all the way back to 2005. Since then, he's racked up over 30 charges since then. And at the time of the shooting, he had 5 active warrants for his arrest as well. So a lot of people are, asking the question, how could he possibly, be out on the streets free? And when he has so many charges, and when he has such an in-depth history with criminal activity here in Travis County, and even some in Williamson County as well. But he wasn't the only one that was arrested as well. You might also remember this man, 22-year-old Ronaldo Culindra Simon. While they were trying to give Aaron Armstrong first aid assistance, he reportedly ran over the arm of Aaron Armstrong while they were giving him first aid as he was trying to leave the scene. Several people witnessed this, said they saw it. He was eventually arrested sometime later and has now been charged with aggravated assault on a police officer. So that area was already the target of a lot of suspicion from people saying, hey, we had these 2 murders in that area, and now we're seeing, another one taking place just this last night at 8 p.m. But over there in North Lamar, you would like to say that would be the end of what we're talking about in terms of, homicidal activity over there, but that unfortunately wasn't the case. There was another murder in that same patrol sector just this morning at about 6 a.m. This will go ahead and show you the scene over here as well. But this call came in. It was about 6 a.m. this morning near Middle Fiskville Drive as well. And this was reports of another shooting just 12 hours later, with police telling us that right now they, are unrelated, even though they are so close to each other. You might think, okay, well, we know that there was a black Dodge Challenger driving off from this first homicide, and then 6 hours later, we have, another homicide where another man is shot and killed. So right now, the details on this one still are very clear as well. The police telling us early this morning that the investigation is still in its early signs right now, that multiple gunshots were reported. They're responding to the residential neighborhood over there, which is just a block away, like we said, in the same patrol sector over there, where unfortunately we'll find another man who was shot and killed. And right now they're saying that, the leads in that one are still very unknown as well, even when it comes to the identity of that suspect. They're not revealing his age. They're not saying, anything about his background. All they're saying is was a white or Hispanic male, age range not given. Police are saying that it is unrelated, at least for right now. They say that if any developments were to happen, that they will, of course, go ahead and update the public on, any further developments, any connections, in case these two crimes are related. But we are still waiting to hear back on that for right now. So 2 murders within the span of just 12 hours now here in North Austin. And you heard Officer Townsend at the beginning of that press conference say this is our 4th homicide. Well, 6 hours later, they have another one, raising the total homicide count in Austin to 5 now on the year. So a very active first half of the year, first month of the year here in Austin, with just 3 homicides in North Austin alone reported in basically almost the same area over there. So that is something we'll definitely be keeping our eyes on as well. We'll have a reporter, Katie Fox, as well, who will be doing more of a deep dive into there, hopefully bringing us some more updates on that in terms of the details that haven't been released, things that I might have not talked about. But that will do it for us here for this first little block of Austin. Now we're going to have a lot more coming up for you, including a lot of protest activity over the weekend here in Austin, specifically Iranian protest yesterday. A sea of Iranian flags waving in front of the state capitol, all in support of the protests that are sweeping across the country over there. We'll talk to some of those people who have their families over there, who haven't heard from them in a matter of days. So stick around, have some interviews that you welcome back into Austin now. Glad to have you back here with us. As I was mentioning before, and as you're probably very aware, it was a very active weekend here in Austin when it came to protest activity. Specifically, maybe you were watching us yesterday, you saw that I did cover an Iranian protest over here, maybe more of a demonstration. You're probably very aware of what's happening in Iran right now as protests are making their way across the country. Anti-regime protests, a lot of people who are very fed up with the economic instability and the inflation that has been steeply increasing in the country, especially in recent years. And the Iranian population here in Austin actually did try to make their voices heard yesterday. Many of these people that you're about to see out here are from Iran themselves, who actually fled the country due to lack of political freedom and religious freedom as well. But we'll go ahead and show you. This was
the one last night that is pretty close. So obviously that's something that the public would think or infer, and I would infer as well. But the information we have is that they're not related.
Check out this video right here. Sorry about that. We'll go ahead and start that over for you. But yeah, this was the scene over here in front of the Capitol yesterday. The protest starting about 1 in the afternoon. This was hundreds of people out here supporting the protest going on in Iran. You can see several flags waving and several signs that are asking the U.S. for help, and a lot of people are basically just wanting to see their friends and their families over there in Iran, get the help from the U.S. that they say that they need. And you can see, we heard a lot of chants as well, freedom, freedom for Iran, all of these chants, all of these, different slogans going around. And, you see a lot of protests maybe across Austin where people, maybe don't have a direct connection to something that may be happening, overseas, and they're just wanting to go in there and, help out. But these people, a large majority of them that we talked to had family over there in Iran, have family over there right now that are taking place in these protests, and due to the internet blackout over there, they haven't heard from them in days. And it's been, quite scary for a lot of them, as that death toll has officially rose to over 600, according to activists within the country, who are saying that a large portion of that is protesters as well, and about 50 of them being armed security forces with the government as well. But like I said, this has been at the forefront of a lot of coverage here. A lot of these people that we did talk to have their families here. We'll go ahead and show you an interview real quick of one of those. This was a lady who fled here to the U.S. about 27 years ago. She told me that, like we mentioned, it was due to lack of political freedom. She felt like she almost didn't have a choice here in the U.S. or in Iran, but says that she still has family back there. With this internet blackout currently, taking place, and that death toll continuing to rise every day, that she's become more worried from by the day. Here's that full, or at least part of that interview with her for you here now.
They have family back there in Iran, obviously with the blackout, very worrying. I mean, how many people would you say here have someone back in Iran that they can't get in contact with now?
Many of us, actually. Last I talked to my cousins was 3 days ago or 4 days ago, but that was before the blackout. So they said they're okay, but a lot of people are very concerned. Almost everybody has someone back home. They are killing people because just simply we're against the government.
And you can listen to her there as well if you're maybe unfamiliar in terms of why she not be able to get in contact with her family. It was back on Thursday that the Iranian government implemented a complete internet blackout. So they cut off an entire internet access for the entire country. So everyone that was inside basically lost almost all forms of communication into the outside parts of the country. And that's why we're seeing so many people out there yesterday saying that they are just so unsure what is happening with their families and currently where they're at right now. And if they're safe, they have to hope that they aren't part of these hundreds of people which have now been killed as a part of these demonstrations. But then she goes on to talk about just why she's out here and just her experience with it, and why she feels that they need to be out here having their voices heard.
People are very concerned. Almost everybody has someone back home. They are killing people because just simply we're against the government. You can be in any faith, if you're Baha'i, Zoroastrian, Jews, Christian. We're here to say we want democracy. We want freedom for Iran, and we're tired of this dictatorship.
And we were out there for a large majority of this protest yesterday, me and Alec Nolan, as well as one of our photographers, Reggie. And the thing that we were commenting about, and the thing that we are noticing, is that that this is maybe one of the more organized protests that we have seen here in Austin. These people were very determined, and maybe one of the more energetic protests that we've seen. Heard drums banging, everyone, from all age ranges, from young kids to, people, that might be a little bit older, were taking part in this chants, and they are all just very determined to have their voices heard as they were telling us that, their friends and families' lives are on the line right now. And a lot of these people were looking for President Trump to take action. We heard a lot of chants saying, Donald Trump, help Iran. They are looking for the president to take some sort of action, and that has been at the forefront of a lot of talks and a lot of rumors. Is Trump has said, if they continue to kill people like they have in the past, that we will take military action against them. And he actually talked a little bit on that on the Air Force One as well, just yesterday, as well as he kind of updated reporters a little bit in terms of what's currently going on with their current relationship with Iran. It's been hinted that maybe Tehran wants to get involved in some sort of negotiations as well. But we'll go ahead and listen into the president. He answers a few questions and maybe sheds just a little bit light, or a little bit more light, on what we can expect in these next few days to come.
And Starlink to Iran, sir, to help people on the ground. If the internet blackout for more than 70
Well, we're gonna be talking about that. We may get the internet going if that's possible.
Are you talking to Musk?
We may speak to Elon, because as you know, he's very good at that kind of thing. He's got a very good company, so we may speak to Elon Musk. And in fact, I'm going to call him as soon as I'm finished with you.
You hear them talking about Starlink as well. That is owned by, he mentions Elon Musk, that he's going to be talking about them. It's already been used by some people with Iran. It's one of the only ways that they can get information out there of Iran with that internet blackout going on. That is the system owned and operated by Elon Musk, the satellite system that allows, some sort of communication to leave the country here. So that's been one of the only ways that people have been able to get information out of the country. So President Trump saying that he is looking to maybe implement that more, and to potentially, like he even said, fully restore internet connection to the country.
Trump said that they would consider military and commercial bases as legitimate targets to use Trump. Are you concerned
Well, if they do that, we'll consider things targets they wouldn't believe. If they do that, we will hit them at levels that they've never been hit before. And they won't even believe it. I have options that are so strong. So, I mean, if they did that, it'll be met with a very, very powerful force.
You hear him talking right there. That was in response to Iran. They blamed these protests on Trump, saying that these people are acting on his behalf, and saying that they're doing this in order to get a response from Trump. And they even threaten, hey, if the U.S. is going to take military action, we will hit them right back. And you can say and hear President Trump saying that we will hit them very hard if they decide to take that course of action.
I think Iran takes their threats seriously.
I think so. Don't you think so, CNN? Don't you think so? Wouldn't you say that they probably do at this point? After going through it for years with me, being hit, Soleimani, al-Baghdadi, the Iran nuclear threat wiped out, don't you think, and then you just had Venezuela, don't you think, she says, CNN, you think they take your threat seriously? Wouldn't you say they do after all of the things we've done? What a stupid question.
You can see President Trump keeping up his dazzling relationship with CNN, always, no words spare whenever he is interacting with them. But, reporter asked, do you think, that Iran will take our threat seriously? You hear President Trump saying, we have a track record of that. And if you look at what happened in Iran just, months ago with Operation Midnight, with the U.S. carrying out strikes on, key nuclear points across the country, as well as, he mentions, strikes against, IRGC leaders, Soleimani, as well as, ISIS leaders as well across the Middle East. I mean, that he's trying to, get the point across that the U.S. is very willing to take action, and that he has a track record of making that very clear, eventually saying to the CNN reporter right there, what a stupid question. So, that on that ride back to Washington, D.C. on Air Force One, that was obviously a big focal point, and these reporters trying to get answers from Trump on what that might look like in terms of future action. And some of these people that we talked to on Sunday as well at this protest were telling us, that they voted for Trump, and that this was something that they were expecting from him when they did vote for him. They knew this day would come, and they wanted action to be taken, and that they expect him to make the right look like? Well, it's still very unclear. We still don't know right now, so we'll have to wait for the president to see what sort of action he will take there. But obviously here, even in Austin, across the country, people that have their families in Iran are still very worried about what might still be to come. But we'll have more on that coming up as well. We'll have more on protests covering ICE that happened here in Austin just right after this break. 5 people detained as things got pretty rowdy with the deployment of tear gas and pepper balls as well. So we'll talk about that as well as what's currently going on in the state of Minnesota as tensions continue to increase with the activity of ICE over there. So we'll have that more for you coming up. Welcome back into Austin. Now we are talking about those Iranian protests going on yesterday, but that wasn't the only ones happening over the weekend. Here on Saturday, a pretty active day as well as a very active night when it came to ICE protest across the city. We saw Some taking place earlier in the day. There was one at City Hall on Saturday. There were thousands of people out at that one. We saw some officials like Greg Kazar taking to the stand, or taking to the podium to talk on that, all in opposition to ICE activity that's been happening across the country, as well, here in Austin, specifically in Minnesota, with the killing of Renee Good by an ICE agent over there. That has been at the forefront of a lot of media attention over here as well. But we mentioned that wasn't the only activity that happened. Yes, that was probably one of the biggest protests here to happen over this weekend. But later on that night, once it started getting to about 7 o'clock, we started to see some activity at the J.J. Pickle Federal Building, where things started to get just a little bit out of hand. We'll go ahead and show you that video now. But this was the scene over there. Just about 7:30 over there is when we started seeing a lot of activity over there. We saw a lot of protesters start gathering around the J.J. Pickle Federal Building, which has been used for ICE detainment before. You can see the people over there start burning some sort of flag. That causes the deployment of tear gas over here, as well as pepper balls. That caused the crowd to disperse there, at least for a little bit, but then they eventually regathered. They started moving west from that J.J. Pickle Federal Building and started making their way south over there on Congress. And this wasn't just some, protest that was happening on the sidewalk and we were following along with it. They were blocking a full lane of traffic southbound there on Congress. A full, probably, at least maybe, 20, 30-ish people, not as big as the initial group, probably 100 as you're seeing right here that was outside the J.J. Pickle Federal Building. But once they started to get over there to Congress, they stopped at 6th Street. That's all taking place after this video that you're seeing here. That was the crowd right there. This was this crowd that was moving south there on Congress. They had, a full, kind of full police force following along with them, monitoring it, seeing, exactly where they were going. And then we saw this rush from APD. This is what they were doing over there on 6th Street. They're rerouting cars. They're blocking them from driving through the 6th Street and Congress intersection. And then this eventually right here is the result that you see of it. This comes, after APD eventually rushed the crowd with several officers. They detained 5 of those people. You can see that video kind of play out, multiple people on the ground as several officers detained them over there. And we know that 5 people in total were arrested. And we know that they have been released as well. They were released today. 4 of them have been charged with obstructing a highway. One of them has been charged with obstructing the officer duties of one of the police over there as well. They have been released, but a very active scene over there this weekend. I mean, this was the culmination of a lot of activity taking part throughout the day there in the city, and then we eventually see this as a result of some of the protesters at least taking the activity into their own hands during the night hours, and starting to kind of disrupt activity over there on Congress. And that is where APD drew the line over there in terms of what they were going to accept and what was going to be labeled as a protest that would be allowed. But this, like we said, is all coming in response to this huge immigration crackdown that is happening over there in Minnesota right now. We have seen over 2,000 DHS agents deploy to the state over there, with Kristi Noem saying yesterday that there was going to be additional troops deployed over there as well, for the largest, what DHS calls the largest ICE operation in history over there. And just today, it was just announced a few hours ago that these lawmakers in Minnesota, that Mayor Jacob Frey, as well as the Attorney General and other people within the city over there, are not just going to stand by and allow this to happen, that they are going to be taking action. They did file a federal lawsuit today against the state. Excuse me. They filed a federal lawsuit against the DHS today. Sorry, excuse me for that. And this comes, as they say, enough is enough, that we are going to be taking action. They're saying that this activity over there in Minnesota is unlawful. Their words, in particular, saying that this is arbitrary and capricious, saying that, other states aren't seeing this similar activity, saying that this is very targeted to Minnesota as well, saying that they are, being wrongly terminated. And you have, heard Jacob Frey say in the past that these are our neighbors, that, they aren't cracking down on criminals, but they are wrongfully, removing people, from their family and from their friends. This was him at one of the pressers today as they announced this lawsuit. Go ahead and take a listen to what he had to say.
Not normal times. And so the response that we are asking for from the judicial system and from the courts requires that we file suit at this particular moment. what we are seeing right now is not normal immigration enforcement. We are not asking ICE not to do ICE things. We are asking this federal government to stop the unconstitutional conduct that is invading our streets each and every day. You've seen the videos. At times, there are as many as 50 agents arresting one person. The scale is wildly disproportionate and has nothing to do with keeping people safe. In Minneapolis, we've done work extensively with the federal government under multiple administrations to keep people in our city safe. We have worked with the DEA, the ATF, the FBI, the Attorney General's office, as well as the U.S. Attorney's office, to successfully drive down crime in our city. We've seen the results of that work, but let's be clear. The stated reason of this federal government for bringing in this full invasion of ICE and border control is not safety.
And you can see, obviously, very opposed to what is happening over there. They have been fighting tooth and nail since this operation began. Obviously, Jacob Frey's been very outspoken. You might remember he was the one who said that, have the infamous phrase, ICE, get the F out of here, is what he, told in the presser just a few days ago as well. So obviously very high tensions in Minnesota. But coming up, we will have a little bit more for you in terms of what's going on. Pete Hegseth making a visit to Texas as well, all specifically focused on the defense industry and our budget that we're hoping to increase by multi-billions of dollars. We'll have that and more coming up for you here soon. Welcome back into Austin now. Going to be bringing things back here again to Texas, but specifically talking about the defense industry, as we had a pretty high up in the official government chain of command here, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. He made a visit today here to Texas, to Fort Worth, all specifically focused on the defense industry. As you can see, probably some familiar faces right here. He's with John Cornyn and Senator Ted Cruz. This was them welcoming Secretary of War Pete Hegseth in, and this is all part of his Arsenal of Freedom tour, which is what he is calling it, specifically going through Texas right now. And this is all focused on them increasing the defense budget right now. I'll go ahead and take a look at those numbers here for you real quick. But as you can already very well aware, we spend multi-billions of dollars every year on the defense industry, but Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump have made it very clear that they are looking to increase that. In 2026 for the fiscal year, our U.S. defense budget was $901 billion. By 2027, they want to jump that up to $1.5 trillion in 2027. So that's exactly what Pete Hegseth was here doing today. He went to Fort Worth. He toured the Lockheed Martin facility over there, which has 19,000 workers, which are dedicated over there to helping to build the F-35 Lightning II fighter jets. He basically went through them, talked to them, kind of hyping them up, thanking them for their service, and saying that they are at the heart of this beating machine that is the U.S. defense industry, and that without them, none of this would be possible. He also met with another familiar face that a lot of you might recognize as well. This was just a few hours ago, posted by John Cornyn as well. They didn't just go through Fort Worth as well, but also obviously with Elon Musk having a very heavy presence here as well. This was the scene just a few hours ago. You can see the SpaceX leadership are saying full out in force today with Elon Musk, as well as some of the other VPs for Starship Engineering, giving a tour of Star Factory to Senator Ted Cruz and to John Cornyn, and as well to Pete Hegseth as well. So a large focus being placed on the defense industry here in Texas, as it sees that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump definitely have their eyes on Texas being a leader in that industry and continuing to play a big factor as they look to increase the defense budget here in Texas. But coming up, that'll do it for us here for this block. But coming up, of course, all eyes have been on Uvalde as well, where obviously the major school shooting happened at Robb Elementary, where one of those officers involved has now been placed on trial for what some are saying has he failed to act when failed to save the lives of multiple children over there. We'll have some of those heartbreaking testimonies and evidence coming up here right after this break. Welcome back into Austin now, as we're talking to you right before that break. The trials for the school shooting in Uvalde happening back in May of 2022 are stretching into their second week now. Adrian Gonzalez, a former school officer over there in the district, now facing several charges, 29 to be exact, for child abandonment and endangerment. He was one of the first on scene over there when a gunman opened fire over there 3 years ago, killing 19 students and 2 teachers. Now, as we said, those trials are heading into their second week now. In that first week, obviously, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of very emotional testimonies, and this week proved to be the very same as they entered into the courtroom here on Monday as well. Specifically, testimonies from several people that were involved in the school over there. Specifically, one of these that I'm about to show you is a 4th grade teacher over there at Robb Elementary at the time of that shooting. He was in room 111 that was adjoined with room 112. He goes ahead and testifies what he saw that day and what he experienced. So go ahead and show you that clip now. We'll warn you that it is very emotional and some very graphic images that he is describing that took place there over there in May in 2022.
We were there, I was doing my thing and the kids were watching the movie, and I heard a noise, but it was kind of far, but it was still loud. And then...
Did you recognize the noise?
No, I didn't. I assumed that it sounded like books when you bang them on the floor, and that's what it sounded like, but it was kind of far.
And how many times did you hear that sound?
I would say maybe like 5, 6 times or around there. And as I heard it, it kept on getting closer and closer, but it still seemed distant anyways, but yeah. Where I saw him.
What did you see?
A black shadow.
And what was the black shadow doing?
The black shadow was holding a gun, and I know that he was holding a gun because I just saw the fire come out of the gun.
And were you sitting or standing at the time?
Standing.
And what did you do?
Well, he shot at me. He hit me in my arm.
Can you show us where he hit you?
He hit right here.
Okay.
So he hit me on my arm, and that's when I fell to the ground. And then after I fell to the ground, he came around and he shot the kids.
How close was he to you when that happened?
He was very close. I was on the other side of my kidney table, and he was probably behind the kidney table.
And so it was one of the first things he did after shooting you was to shoot your kids?
Yes, sir.
And about how many shots did you hear go off?
Just a lot. I couldn't tell you how many, but just a lot.
Did the shadow with the gun stay in room 111 the entire time?
I'm not sure if it was the whole time, but what I do remember was a lot of the coughing that he was doing and the footsteps, so I heard a lot of it. He did approach me again. That's when he came and he tried to taunt me. He got some of my blood and splashed it on my face, and then he also...
and what were you doing when he splashed the blood on your face?
I was on the ground, hurt, yeah.
Were your eyes open or closed?
I closed them.
And why did you close your eyes?
Because I wanted him to think that I was dead.
You can hear that just heartbreaking testimony from that 4th grade teacher, him reliving the moments that he had to pretend he was dead as that gunman went through his class. There you can see on his arm right there the scar where he says that he was shot by this gunman. And, one of the only things that he can recall is, seeing a black shadow with this weapon in his hand that, all he saw was that explosion from his gun. And after he had been shot, the shooter started making his way through the classroom and shooting his students as well. He says one of the only things he, had left to do in order to save his life was he had to pretend he was dead, as he said the shooter mocked him, sprayed blood on his face. So just an absolutely heartbreaking testimony as well, but that wasn't the only one as well. We only have a few minutes here left of time, but I do want to, have you listen to some of these police calls that they used as evidence, of what people were, recording or what people were saying as part of these police calls as they were coming in. And I will warn you as well that some of these are graphic as well. And, they kind of just add to the scene over there and just, the true destruction and the true loss of life that was happening over there. So go ahead and just take a listen real quick.
Showing you State's Exhibit 1. You recognize this building, the fourth grade wing that you worked in the hallway?
Yes, sir.
And is this building, was it made?
Yes.
It is one truck, it's a pickup truck. It's a pickup truck now? I said, you got it, I'm coming over. Oh my God, they're running, I don't know why. I don't have you around to 715 Oak Greenville Road, have a one vehicle accident, white pickup truck crashed through the ditch. Hello? Okay, ma'am, how many people running? 3 people running? Hello, ma'am? Okay, ma'am, what is your name? Amy. Okay. Miss Amy, how many shots were fired? Okay, ma'am, he's on campus. Okay, he's on the house.
That is just some of the videos, some of those calls that came in as that shooter was on campus right there. We have a little bit more to show you, but due to time constraints, that's all we'll show you from now. But this is, of course, going to be a case that, as it stays on trial, will be at the forefront here of coverage, especially here at Fox. We're going to be bringing you those updates the more and more that we have them. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us here for Fox and for Austin. And now we'll go ahead and catch you here tomorrow. I'll be right back with you.